Hi, welcome to Crime Clueless. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
I'm Lara.
I'm Krista.
And I'm Kayla.
How's everybody doing today?
I'm pretty good. Excited it's the weekend.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's
Finally.
cooling down.
It's nice today.
I'm tired.
Yeah.
Any dogs barking this morning.
At least it was dogs, though. You love dogs.
It's true.
I
That's
don't-
better.
I don't think she loves them at 4:00 in the morning, though.
I don't like anything at 4:00 in the morning.
I would say they're probably better than the birds that were haunting you. So
Incessant birds.
That's
That's how we know I'm not a morning person, because I like birds and I like dogs, and I hate them in the morning.
It's that being woken up when it's still pitch black
Yeah.
outside.
Well, okay. I am secure in my apartment because it's on the 3rd floor. There's one point of entry. When I am house sitting, I get paranoid because there's too many doors, there's too many windows. And so I was already paranoid last night when I was falling asleep because I heard creaking somewhere. And so when the dog started barking this morning at 4 a.m., I woke up and was convinced that someone was trying to murder me.
Mhm.
So it was not a good awakening.
That's never good.
No.
And I couldn't go back to sleep.
Oh, that gives you that extra adrenaline.
Yeah,
It
no,
does
I
not.
like popped right up and was
Yeah.
like, what's happening?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it's terrible.
I'm sorry.
It's fine.
I hate that when your door's like almost closed, but not quite. And then the air conditioner turns on, it like opens it or like shuts it.
Oh,
It's like, who's coming in my room?
yeah.
Especially when you were asleep. And like
Yes.
that creak.
And my door
or
creaks. Apparently, I need to WD-40 it. But the other day it was like opening. I was like, Brooks, go close that door because that's freaking me out. I cannot have that happening.
Ugh,
Yeah.
no.
I saw a story on Threads this week, and it was a lady, her dog woke her up because he was barking. And so she opened the door and there was a bear
Oh my
there.
gosh.
So she just shut the door and posted about it on Facebook, and her friend called the police for her. And the
Good
police
friend.
showed up and like helped her get out the window and stuff. But when they went downstairs, the door was open, the bear was gone, but half her dog food was eaten.
Oh my
So-
gosh.
Checked out.
Oh,
Wow.
Oh, that's
was
rough.
that the same day I sent you the bear in my
It really
neighborhood?
was. Yes, it was. I was like, oh my gosh, where is this? But I can't remember where it was, but it wasn't here.
Oh,
The bears are out and about.
They are.
yes. I didn't even know we had bears here.
Arizona.
I know,
Yeah.
but we live very far away from that.
We do. I didn't know they'd be walking around our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then there was that bear in Tucson in the grocery
Mhm.
store
Yeah.
running around fries.
I would
That's so
take a
wild.
bear in my house over a person, though. Anytime.
Yes.
Anytime. I would just shut the
Yeah.
door and just
Yeah.
leave it be. Yep.
'Cause the bear's not going to keep trying to get at me to kill me. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, bear.
Mhm.
That's an interesting would you rather.
Have you not heard that one?
No.
Would you rather be stuck in the woods with a man or a bear? That was a big thing last year.
Oh, yeah. All the
Yeah,
women's
you didn't hear
responses
that?
are
I-
bear.
Did, but not in my house.
Oh, well, yeah. But same concept.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd rather have a bear break in and just eat my dog food.
Yep.
Mhm.
And leave.
Yeah,
Yeah, get bored.
while I hide in my room.
hmm And call the police.
Yes. And
Yes.
call the police. Don't
Do
post about it on Facebook.
Yeah,
police.
you can do
Do
that,
that
later.
after,
Yeah.
If a bear made it up to my 3rd floor apartment, at that point, they put in the effort. This is your house now.
Fair.
And found
on
your
in.
door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair.
They got into my apartment.
Feed
and-
it a sandwich and just send it on its way.
Yeah.
Here's your reward.
Yeah. You
There's
earned
some
it.
salmon in my freezer. I'll just throw it out into the hallway.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, that's why I keep salmon in my freezer.
There you go.
Yes.
For the bears.
Guys, it's officially spooky season.
It is.
Yay.
Most wonderful time of the year.
I've got great spooky stories for you today.
Yay.
So excited.
Should we jump right in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes.
Just to give a quick trigger warning for this episode, there are discussions of domestic violence and domestic abuse in this case. If that's something that is a trigger for you and not one you want to listen to, we just wanted to give you a heads up at the beginning, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Okay. Imagine the Appalachian Mountains in the late 19th century. You've got misty hollows, isolated log cabins, and evenings lit by oil lamps.
Ooh, stories in the Appalachians are always spooky.
Yes. We are talking about the remote hills of West Virginia. Ghost stories weren't just tales to thrill children, they were part of everyday life. Folks passed down eerie superstitions through generations. They would say, never whistle after dark. If you do, you might invite wandering spirits. Many painted their porch ceilings, it's called haint blue, to ward off haints, which are restless ghosts of the unsettled dead. A sudden cold breeze at midnight or a strange voice on the wind could be taken as an omen from beyond. Skepticism had its place, sure, but so did a healthy respect for the unseen. In this world, the veil between the living and the dead felt thin, and sometimes, just sometimes, people believed a message might slip through. It's in this superstitious Appalachian setting that a one-of-a-kind crime story unfolded. For the first and only time in American history, testimony from a ghost was said to help convict a murderer.
Wow.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm
That's
excited
really
for this one.
interesting.
The year was 1897, and a young woman named Zona Heaster Shue, or Zona to her friends, had died under mysterious circumstances. Locals might have accepted her death as just another tragedy of mountain life, if not for Zona's mother, Mary Jane Hester, and the spine-chilling claim she brought to authorities. Mary Jane swore that her daughter's spirit had appeared to her night after night to reveal the truth of how she died. Sound unbelievable? Well, stick around. Today, we're diving into the eerie, true story of the Greenbrier Ghost. Get comfortable and leave a light on, maybe.
We're recording in the morning.
Mhm. And let me take you back over a century to Greenbrier County, West Virginia, where our strange case begins. It's January 1897 in Greenbrier County, a cold, quiet part of West Virginia. In a small community near the village of Sam Black Church, a newlywed couple lived in a modest 2-story log house. The bride, 23-year-old Zona Heaster Shue, had married a blacksmith named Edward Stribling Trout Shue. Just a few months earlier had been their wedding. They hadn't been married very long. Zona, as everyone called her, was a pretty young woman from a respectable family. Edward, who often went by Trout, or just Edward, was a newcomer to Greenbrier County. He was tall, muscular, he had striking blue eyes, and a charismatic smile. He had drifted into town the year before looking to start fresh as a blacksmith. The locals found him hardworking, charming, but not everyone was enamored with him. In fact, Mary Jane Hester, Zona's mother, immediately disliked the man. She couldn't put her finger on it, but she felt something was off about her daughter's handsome new suitor. I feel that he's hiding something, she warned Zona more than once. Zona, blinded by love, young in love, handsome new man in their small town, small community, dismissed her mother's intuition. In October 1896, despite Mary Jane's misgivings, Zona and Edward were married. Mary Jane refused to attend the wedding.
Oh.
Kind of sad.
Summer
Very
I
sad.
turned pretty vibes. And the new couple set up home on a mountainside where Edward worked as a blacksmith in the nearby town of Lewisburg. Mary Jane's unease about her son-in-law would soon prove tragically warranted. Unknown to Zona and her family, Edward had a checkered past. He'd been married twice before. His first marriage to Allie ended in divorce amid accusations of cruelty and beatings.
Oh, that's awful.
So awful. His second wife, Lucy, had died under mysterious circumstances only 8 months into their marriage. Edward claimed that Lucy slipped and hit her head on a rock, but very few believed that story. Even more troubling, Edward had done a stint in prison for stealing a horse, and locals in his previous towns had whispered that he had a ferocious temper. Mary Jane hadn't even known these details. She just had that intuition. She had sensed that the man, who now called himself Edward Shue, he was hiding the name Trout, was bad news. 3 months into the marriage, on January 23rd, 1897, tragedy struck. That morning, Edward left home to go to work at the blacksmith shop as usual. He later said he had stopped by a neighbor's house on the way and asked if their young boy, who was an 11-year-old named Andy, could run an errand for him. Edward wanted Andy to go check on Zona at the house and see if she needed anything from the store.
That's
odd.
weird.
Kind of a weird request, yes.
Thinking ahead, she's probably dead. And he's sending an 11-year-old boy to go find her.
Pretty crappy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was saying that she hadn't felt very good that morning. In fact, the whole week. He said that he was sending Andy over there to just ask real quick, and he would go get it for her.
How long had he lived in the town before they got married?
Only less than a year.
Okay.
I want to say it was like early 1896 when he moved there.
So they didn't hear anything from where had he lived before? Was it far away?
But I mean, 1896.
I
So
know.
unless it was like a nearby town.
Well, that's what I was wondering if
Yeah.
it was nearby or if he had like moved states or something
Yeah.
to get away from his awful past.
Yeah.
So he was born in Augusta County in Virginia in 1861. And then, like I said, he had moved to Greenbrier in 1896. And he lived in Virginia most of his life. I can't really see exactly where he moved from.
How old is he? I can't do math.
35.
35 and she's 23.
When they got married.
But also
I'm like,
1896.
Before you said that, I'd already done the math in my head because I was thinking about it.
I was like, how old is he? He's been married multiple times and she's 23.
Kayla was correct. Inside the farmhouse, Andy discovered Zona's lifeless body sprawled on the floor at the foot of the stairs.
That's so terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Send an 11-year-old to find that.
Sad.
She was lying on her back, stretched out straight with her legs together. One arm rested across her stomach and the other lay at her side. Zona's head was slightly tilted to one side and her eyes were wide open, staring at nothing. The child, Andy, terrified. Even he could tell that she was dead. Panicking, Andy dropped the egg basket he'd been carrying and bolted from the house.
Oh, that's really sad.
He ran home to tell his mother and then sprinted to the blacksmith shop to inform Edward what he had discovered.
Surprise.
Yeah. When Edward heard the news, he appeared utterly distraught. Neighbors later recalled that he wailed in anguish and rushed home ahead of everyone else. By the time the local doctor, Dr. George W. Knapp, arrived, nearly an hour after being summoned, by the way, Edward had already carried Zona's body upstairs to the bedroom and placed her on the bed. This was unusual. In those days, proper protocol is similar then as it is today. It was to leave the body so that they could come and examine without messing with evidence or whatever, right? They even had a coroner that would come. Like, you're not supposed to touch it even then. But Edward, hysterical with grief, or so it appeared,
Sure.
he cradled Zona's head and rocked back and forth, sobbing and clinging to her. He also took it upon himself to prepare his wife's corpse for burial, which local custom normally left to the women of the community. Edward, though, dressed Zona's body himself, choosing a high-necked, stiff-collar burgundy dress, which ironically was the very same dress that Zona had worn at their wedding.
Was it to cover bruises?
Probably.
High neck?
That's what I was wondering.
I'm sure that's why he dressed her.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yep, you guys are good. So he's getting her ready for burial. He placed a veil over her face and he even did her hair. Throughout all this, Edward would not let anyone else near the body. Every time the doctor or the neighbors tried to examine Zona, Edward hovered anxiously at her head, weeping and shielding her from everybody in the room, which is also odd. The doctor managed only a very cursory examination under these conditions. Edward's overwhelming display of grief and his constant fussing, his crying, cradling her head, telling the doctor not to disturb her, made the physician extremely uncomfortable. At one point, Dr. Knapp did notice bruising on Zona's neck, just above the dress's high collar. It was a suspicious sign, but when he tried to inspect her neck more closely, Edward reacted so violently, breaking into loud sobs and anguish, that Dr. Knapp decided to back off.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
It is.
Needed to get him out of the room.
Mhm. And it worked because he didn't want to upset the widower further. So the doctor just quickly finalized his exam and initially recorded the cause of death as an everlasting faint,
Oh,
which is an old-fashioned term implying a heart attack or sudden collapse. So everlasting faint was actually listed on the death certificate, essentially
Interesting.
saying that her heart just stopped unexpectedly.
as a 23-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Because, I mean, that could have been used for anything, even if it was like a brain aneurysm. Because, I mean, at the time,
Mhm.
they had no way of checking.
Yeah.
Right. Dr. Knapp actually later amended the cause to childbirth in his records because he had been treating Zona for, quote, female trouble in the weeks prior. However, there was no evidence that Zona was pregnant. But the doctor might have thought that she had complications from a miscarriage or, quote, female ailment. Yeah. Either way, with a grieving husband at the bedside and no obvious signs of foul play beyond that quick glimpse of a bruise, the doctor signed off the death certificate as natural. Case closed, or so it seemed.
I mean, if she was laying at the bottom of the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
So the doctor could have thought she fell down the stairs and it wouldn't be too out there to have bruises. But he should have looked into it more. But yes.
Yeah. Zona's body was prepared for burial. Like we said, Edward personally supervised every step. Neighbors who came by to help were struck by the widower's odd behavior during the wake at Mary Jane's house. Edward insisted on keeping a pillow on one side of Zona's head and a rolled cloth on the other side inside the coffin, explaining in a choked voice that these were to, quote, help her rest easier.
Weird.
Mm-hmm.
He also tied a large scarf around Zona's neck, saying through tears that it had been her favorite. Perhaps the strangest detail of all, whenever someone attempted to approach the coffin and view Zona closely, Edward wouldn't allow them near her head. If a friend or family member got too close, he got agitated and hovered, just trying to block their view. A few people did notice something unsettling. When the corpse was moved or jostled, Zona's head flopped unnaturally within the high collar of the dress as if her neck were oddly loose.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Whispers began circulating that maybe Zona's neck had broken, maybe from a fall down the stairs. But at the time, no one could confirm it because the doctor had already signed off. Mary Jane, deep in grief over the loss of her daughter, also observed her son-in-law's odd actions. She had already distrusted this man, and now her suspicions were mounting that Zona's death was no accident. As the small community mourned Zona's sudden passing, Mary Jane's mind raced. She felt in her bones that Trout had murdered her daughter, and she prayed that somehow the truth would come out. After the funeral, Edward returned to town, and Zona was laid to rest on January 24th, 1897, in the local cemetery on a hill near her childhood home. Mary Jane took home one of the burial linens, a bedsheet that had been in Zona's coffin, under her head as a keepsake. In the days following, she noticed something strange about the sheet. It gave off this weird foul odor, so Mary Jane decided to wash it. But when she dropped the sheet into her wash basin, the water instantly turned bright red.
Oh.
Yeah, as if like blood had just leached out of the fabric.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. This startled Mary Jane, and she pulled the sheet out of the basin. And to her amazement, the once white sheet was now stained pink, and no amount of boiling water or bleaching could seem to remove the tint of the pink.
But it wasn't pink before?
Mm-mm.
Weird.
It was as if blood had permanently dyed it. So, if it was like a big sheet and there was a splotch on it,
Yeah.
it might have seeped throughout. But yeah.
But she didn't notice the blood before she put it in there.
Mm-mm.
Weird.
Nope.
Well, also cold water and soap remove blood from clothing.
Yeah.
Right?
I think she probably put it in hot water first before putting,
Oh, okay.
just to get the smell out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
That
if
makes
she
sense.
didn't see any blood in there,
Yeah.
she wouldn't. She might have thought about cold water if it had blood in it. Like if she
Yeah.
could see a big blood splash, maybe.
I mean, even if it was only just like a tiny drop of blood, would it have made the water that red though?
No, I don't
Probably
think
not.
so.
to be able to dye the basin that red, like it would have had to be a big splotch. And I'm sure she would have noticed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
really weird.
in 1896, would you boil water just to wash clothes, though?
Maybe.
Maybe if it was important to you.
Maybe.
Especially white, something white if she wanted to keep it.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Or
Something else is afoot.
That's what I'm saying.
maybe Zona.
Definitely Zona.
In the beliefs of her time, such a thing was seen as a sign, an omen that her daughter's death was unjust. Mary Jane took it as confirmation of what she already suspected in her heart, that Zona had been murdered. The strange blood stains on the sheet, which refused to fade, convinced her that evil had been at work. So Mary Jane did something that fit right into her Appalachian worldview. She prayed. Every night, she knelt and begged for a way to know the truth of Zona's death. If her daughter had indeed been killed, Mary Jane wanted a sign from beyond. According to her later testimony, Mary Jane prayed for weeks that Zona would return and reveal what really happened. And then one night, her prayers were answered in the most startling way imaginable. About a month after the burial, Mary Jane claimed that Zona's spirit visited her, and not just once, but 4 nights in a row. In late February 1897, each night as she lay in bed in the darkness, overcome with grief, when a strange light filled up her whole room. The light took form and became an apparition of Zona herself. According to Mary Jane's story, the room turned suddenly cold, and there stood Zona at her bedside looking exactly as she had in life, down to the dress she had died in. At first, Mary Jane was frightened, but this was what she had prayed for. In a trembling voice, she asked the specter, "Zona, what happened?" And over those 4 nights, the ghost answered. In a hushed, desperate tone, the apparition of Zona told her mother a shocking tale. Edward had killed her. He was abusive, Zona said, prone to fits of rage. On the day of her death, they had argued because Edward thought Zona hadn't cooked any meat for dinner. Like, that's the reason?
Yeah, it's terrible.
In a furious outburst, he attacked her. The ghost described the assault in detail. Edward had choked her in a mad rage and savagely broke her neck. To make sure her mother understood, the ghost turned its head completely around until it was facing backwards.
Oh, gosh. That would be so creepy to see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys seen The Haunting of Hill House?
Oh, yeah.
I know Kayla has.
Yeah, I have
There's a
too.
ghost that has a broken neck, and I just got that
The bent
in my
neck
brain.
lady.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I need to watch that this week.
Mary Jane gasped when the ghost of Zona demonstrated the way her neck had been smashed, squeezed off at the first joint, as Mary later phrased it, meaning at the first vertebrae of her neck.
Oh,
In life, such an injury would have instantly incapacitated or killed Zona. The ghost's message was unmistakable. "I was murdered. My husband did it. Here's how you'll know. My neck was broken." Mary Jane said the figure of her daughter looked at her plaintively as if pleading for justice before finally disappearing each night as suddenly as it had come. It's important to note that Mary Jane was not known as fanciful or even a superstitious woman prior to this. In fact, one contemporary account noted that Mary Jane didn't believe in ghosts before this experience. She was a devout, no-nonsense farm woman. This made her story even more compelling to those who knew her. She wasn't someone prone to making up wild tales. Mary Jane herself insisted it was not a dream. As she would later testify, she was wide awake each time Zona's spirit appeared, and she truly believed it was her daughter's ghost, basically in the flesh, visiting on a mission. Armed with the chilling revelations from these visits, Mary Jane faced a daunting task, convincing others that her version was real. In 1897, even in Appalachia, you couldn't exactly march into the sheriff's office and say, "A ghost told me my daughter was murdered," without raising eyebrows. And I did see in one account, they'd probably believe a ghost over a woman in that time.
What about a ghost that is a woman?
Very low on the totem pole.
That's also true. Yeah. Mary Jane decided to focus on tangible facts when seeking help. She went to her brother-in-law, Johnson, and together they went to see the local prosecuting attorney, who was a man named John Alfred Preston. Preston was an educated man, not into superstitions or anything. So Right off the bat, he was skeptical of Mary Jane's story. One can imagine his face as this grieving mother in her 50s described nightly ghostly apparitions. But Mary Jane was persistent. She spent several hours in Preston's office recounting every detail of what the apparition had told her and pleading with him to reopen her daughter's case.
I wonder if they brought up what people noticed at the wake and the funeral to kind of support what her daughter told her. Like, we noticed that.
And people were talking about it.
Yeah.
And if you go talk to that doctor, and he was never able to examine right there.
And Edward was always holding her head. And they did notice the bruising.
Yep.
That was hidden.
And
then hidden
added the
more.
scarf. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the pillow and the towel.
Yes.
To try to keep it in place.
Yeah. You would think that it would stiffen up like the muscles, but
maybe it's so heavy.
Maybe because the head is really heavy. I was thinking that would be like internal decapitation. Is that what they called it?
Yeah.
So
there was probably nothing to hold it in place.
Yeah.
Ooh, poor girl. That's so sad.
So sad. I can't even imagine the force that would have taken and how he would have had to be like shaking her, I feel like.
Yeah. And he could have been that enraged.
I don't know.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And if she was bleeding, I wonder if he hit her, like maybe he hitting her on the ground or something. That could have done it too.
Yeah. He could have even pushed her down the stairs after.
Yeah.
To try to make it look like that.
But the way she was laying,
he probably put her that way. I would
I bet he did.
He had to have
made it look like she fell, but not really.
Yeah. That arranged her perfectly.
Like
she
fainted. Yeah. Whether Preston believed the ghost or not, some of the details that Mary Jane provided were striking. She knew about the bruises on Zona's neck, which, you would think the mom would at some point be able to be close enough. But also neighbors were whispering about it after the funeral. And she emphasized Edward's suspicious behavior. And I believe at this point she had found out about his history of violence. Crucially, Mary Jane's testimony gave Preston a hook. The claim that Zona's neck was broken neck, strangulation. If true, they could prove that this was murder. Prosecutor Preston had to consider the possibility that Zona's death had been misjudged. After all, even without a ghost story, there were rumors in the community. Many neighbors were already whispering about Zona's end and how it seemed off. The eccentric behavior of Edward at the funeral had, quote, set tongues wagging. We need to go back to seeing that. Mary Jane was not alone. Some citizens quietly shared her suspicions. Preston realized he didn't need to fully embrace the ghost story to act. He just needed to find real evidence. So he took Mary Jane's account as a mother's intuition, whether divinely inspired or not, and he did begin an investigation. He first dispatched deputies to re-interview key people, neighbors, family, and the doctor who had signed the death certificate. When Preston himself talked to Dr. Knapp, the doctor admitted that his examination of Zona's body had been incomplete thanks to Edward's interference. This was a huge red flag. Preston also dug into Edward's background and was alarmed to quickly discover his criminal record and previous wives who died under odd circumstances. Those findings, combined with growing public pressure, which was fueled by Mary Jane's fervent storytelling of the ghost's accusation, gave Preston enough cause to take a bold step. He exhumed Zona's body for proper autopsy.
Good.
Yes. I'm glad that the doctor admitted that he wasn't able to do everything he was supposed to.
Yeah, because sometimes they get so prideful that they don't want to admit that anything was wrong. In late February 1897, only about a month after Zona was laid to rest, Greenbrier County authorities decided to exhume her corpse. Edward vigorously objected to this plan. He complained loudly to anyone who would listen that his wife should be left in peace. But the law was the law. The county had ordered an inquest and autopsy, and Edward could not stop it. Edward's protests only made him look more suspicious to anybody that lived in town. One newspaper, the Greenbrier Independent, reported that when told of the exhumation, Shue engrossed that he knew he'd be arrested, but smugly added, "They will not be able to prove I did it." Yeah.
Wow.
It was
Okay.
a careless remark.
Stupid remark.
hmm At the very least, it sounded like he knew his wife had been murdered, even as he denied being the culprit. On February 22nd, they're moving so fast compared to today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A team of doctors and officials gathered at the local one-room nickel schoolhouse near the cemetery to perform the autopsy. The school was chosen likely because it was an indoor space near the graveyard and large enough to accommodate the exam, and perhaps also to keep the proceedings relatively private, but still going to school with that having been done. Curious neighbors were kept at bay, but a jury of 5 local men was impaneled to witness the inquest, as required by law. Dr. Knapp was there, joined by 2 other physicians for a thorough examination. Edward himself was forced to attend the autopsy. In that era, suspected parties were sometimes made to be present at such inquests, perhaps in hopes of rattling their nerves.
I definitely understand that. But if he was innocent and you had to go watch that happen to your wife, that would be really traumatizing.
Yeah.
Horrific.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a cold, gray day. The schoolhouse was unheated, and the only light came from kerosene lanterns that cast shadows that flickered on the walls. One can imagine the breath of the assembled men misting in the chilly air as they opened Zona's coffin. To their surprise, her body was remarkably well preserved. Probably due to the winter temperatures delaying decomp, this meant the doctors could still conduct a reliable postmortem. Edward stood by, reportedly antsy and pale. He continued to protest the proceedings until an official warned him to hush.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Stop it. At that point, Edward fell into an eerie silence, watching the doctors with a fixed, nervous glare. The examination lasted 3 hours. The doctors started with the vital organs, finding no obvious disease or damage that could have caused death. Then they moved to inspect Zona's neck and head. According to later reports, as soon as they began this part of the autopsy, the cause of death was immediately clear. The Greenbrier Independent described it in ghastly detail. They said, quote, "The discovery was made that the neck was broken and the windpipe mashed," which is horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
On the throat, there were marks of fingers indicating that she had been choked. The neck was dislocated between the first and second vertebrae. The ligaments were torn and ruptured, and the windpipe had been crushed at a point in front of the neck. It's kind of remarkable that Mary Jane got that detail right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Saying that it was like at the first vertebrae.
Yeah.
So in other words, Zona's neck had indeed been, and this is horrific and not my words, squeezed off at the point joint, just as Mary Jane claimed the ghost revealed. The injuries were so distinct and horrific, fingerprints bruised into the flesh of her throat, her neck essentially snapped, that there was no doubt now. Zona had been murdered by strangulation. 3 physicians signed a report confirming these findings on March 9th, 1897.
That's terrible.
Mm-hmm. But also that he could have almost gotten away with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so glad they listened and decided to actually perform the autopsy and take a look.
Yeah, because going there saying a ghost told me this.
Yeah.
That has to be hard to walk in there and say that. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people are not going to take you seriously. And I mean, he didn't really believe the ghost story. And thankfully, there were other suspicions. But you know, that took a lot of courage from her mom to walk in and say, "I'm not crazy, but my daughter came to me and this is what happened."
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and he's already done this or something similar to 2 other
Just
wives.
one.
Well, he
The other one was
abusive
divorced.
to the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
one.
But he's at least hurt 2 other women.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
But I think he killed the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just don't get married.
Well, and he wasn't even married to him that long. The first one was
Mhm.
8 months and this one was 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
That temper is getting wild.
He needs to be not getting married and in jail.
Yes.
Yep. As the doctors announced the revelation in the lantern-lit schoolhouse, all eyes fell on Edward. The once confident blacksmith now reportedly trembled. One of the doctors turned to him and coldly said, "Well, Mr. Shue, we have found that your wife's neck to have been broken." At this, witnesses observed Edward's head droop and an expression of despair cross his face. He muttered almost inaudibly, "They cannot prove that I did it."
Okay.
It was a weird response, not a cry of innocence like, "I didn't do it. Go find who did it."
Mhm.
But a legal sounding statement of confidence that proof was lacking. To the prosecutors, it sounded like the words of a guilty man caught by surprise. Word of the autopsy results spread fast through Greenbrier County, sending a jolt through the community. People were astonished and upset. A young woman they had mourned as a tragic but natural loss had in fact been brutally murdered.
I think they're lucky that Edward didn't skip town too after she died. He
Yeah.
could have he could have been like, okay, my wife died and I'm so sad. I have to, like, I can't live here anymore. I have to leave. And then who knows if
he
they would have
leave?
even found them.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't he leave?
I think he probably was narcissistic enough to think that since she had been buried, the cause of death was signed, case closed.
He was probably, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Find my fourth wife, I guess. I don't know.
And I think he had a decent job that he enjoyed, I guess. Place to live.
And he wasn't under suspicion, maybe like he was in a previous town
Mhm.
at that point.
Yeah. I do wonder why he left the last one and not this one. That's a good point.
Were both of his wives in the same town before?
I'm not sure. The reporting is so spotty.
Yeah.
Mostly just focusing on this case.
Yeah. I wonder if they were in the same town when the second wife died. The first wife was like, hey, we should look into that. And so maybe he left then.
Maybe.
Especially because it does say that he stayed in that West Virginia area.
Mm-hmm.
Many in town were amazed and for some frightened that Mary Jane's incredible ghost story appeared to be validated by the facts. It's no wonder the case became the talk of the region. Meanwhile, law enforcement acted quickly. On the strength of the autopsy evidence, Edward was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife. He was promptly locked up in the county jail in Lewisburg to await trial. Edward protested his innocence, of course, but if he was confident before, his bravado began to crack. The evidence against him was entirely circumstantial. There were no eyewitnesses to the crime, except perhaps a ghost, but it was compelling. Zona's corpse itself testified to a vicious homicide, and many believed justice was about to be served, perhaps without otherworldly aid. While Edward sat in jail, more of his unsavory past came to light, further damning him in the court of the public opinion. Local newspapers gleefully reported the revelations. Zona had been his third wife, not his first. His second wife's mysterious death and the first wife's abuse and divorce became common knowledge. Folks also whispered about a disturbing remark Edward had made in jail. Apparently, he bragged that he hoped to have 7 wives in his lifetime, since Zona had, quote, only been his third.
Jeez.
So creepy.
It seems Edward was bizarrely optimistic that he would somehow beat the charge, get out, and remarry over and over again until he hit lucky number 7. This macabre ambition earned him a morbid nickname, the man who wanted 7 wives, in later retellings of the story. The more people learned, the more Edward looked like a habitual predator who had finally been caught.
Almost like Voldemort kind of stuff. Pretty messed up there, Edward. Come on.
Yep.
Everything can tie back to Harry Potter. Edward's trial for the murder of Zona began on June 22nd, 1897, in the Greenbrier County Courthouse in Lewisburg. The old brick courthouse, which interestingly still stands today, was filled with curiosity seekers. After all, this wasn't just any murder trial. It was the talk of the state thanks to the sensational specter that loomed over the case. Newspapers from as far away as Baltimore had picked up the story of a ghost breaking a murder case. However, in the formal setting of the courtroom, the judge and the lawyers tried to keep things strictly earthbound. Prosecutor John Preston had built a solid case based on physical evidence and circumstances. The autopsy results proving homicide, Sue's suspicious behavior and statements, and his history of violence. Mary Jane was his star witness, not because of the ghost, but because she could testify to the events around Zona's death, like Edward's conduct at the funeral and her own persistent suspicions. Preston was cautious during Mary Jane's direct examination. He deliberately avoided any mention of ghostly visits. Why? Well, because ghost testimony is hearsay, obviously.
Yeah.
The alleged victim wasn't alive to speak, and such testimony would normally be inadmissible, not to mention potentially making Mary Jane seem unreliable. So Preston kept to the known facts. Zona's healthy condition prior to death, the odd signs like the scarf and the pillow, and Mary Jane's immediate suspicion of foul play and her efforts to push for investigation. And then came cross-examination, and here's where the defense made a fateful mistake. Edward's defense attorney was a man named James Gardner, and he apparently thought he could make a laughingstock of Mary Jane. Perhaps he assumed that by exposing the ghost story, it would undermine her credibility in front of the jury. So the defense lawyer grilled Mary Jane about her alleged interaction with her daughter's ghost. One can imagine the courtroom hush as he asked in a condescending tone, sounding to the effect of, "Mrs. Hester, is it true that your daughter came back from the dead to talk to you?" The prosecutor objected, but the defense pressed on, and the judge, maybe curious himself, allowed this line of questioning. Mary Jane was thus forced to recount her supernatural story under oath and in detail, with a skeptical lawyer trying to pick it apart. And this is exactly what Preston had hoped to avoid. But Mary Jane held firm. Far from coming off as a crackpot, she answered the defense's questions in a straightforward, unflinching manner, never wavering in her account. And luckily for us, the local newspaper recorded parts of Mary Jane's testimony verbatim, giving us a glimpse into this extraordinary courtroom scene. Under oath, Mary Jane insisted that her daughter's spirit truly visited her. She said, "It was no dream. She came back and told me that he was mad that she didn't have no meat cooked for supper," describing the first apparition and the motive it revealed. Mary Jane then testified that Zona's ghost appeared on 4 separate nights, each time providing more detail. By the second night, the ghost, quote, "told me that her neck was squeezed off at the first joint, and it was just as she told me," Mary Jane stated to the spellbound jury. At this point, the defense attorney sharply questioned her, "And this was not a dream founded upon your distressed condition of mind?" he sneered, suggesting that grief had made her hallucinate. Mary Jane replied calmly, "No, sir, it was no dream, for I was awake as I ever was."
You know what would have been a good thing maybe that they could have done from the prosecution? To not let them release all of the details from the autopsy before the trial. And then when she said what she did without knowledge from that, that would have made her seem really credible there.
Right.
I wonder if the prosecution did note down what she told him first. Maybe. I don't know.
I'm sure he did. She was in there for hours and hours before they even got the body exhumed. Mary Jane continued testifying. The ghost, she said, wore the very dress that she was killed in. And before leaving, quote, "she turned her head completely around and looked at me like she wanted me to know all about it." The lawyer pressed further, "Then you insist that she actually appeared in flesh and blood to you upon 4 different occasions?" Mary Jane didn't even blink. "Yes, sir, I do." Her matter-of-fact demeanor and the level of detail in her story were apparently compelling. Those in the courtroom could practically picture the chilling scene of Zona's specter twisting its broken neck around to reveal the injury. Mary Jane never changed her story and never hesitated in response to these badgering questions. Observers later said that she came across as perfectly sane, credible, and utterly convinced of what she had experienced. The defense's attempt to paint her as a delusional, bereaved mother backfired spectacularly. In fact, by introducing the ghost testimony themselves, the defense opened the door for the jury and everyone present to freely consider it. The judge eventually instructed the jury to disregard any talk of evidence, since the spirit's word was not officially admissible, but it was too late. The jurors had heard every spooky detail, and many of them, being local, seemed inclined to believe Mary Jane or at least respect her belief in the vision, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from the ghostly portion, the rest of the trial provided plenty of earthly evidence of Edward's guilt. Neighbors recounted Edward's odd behavior around the funeral. Dr. Knapp testified about the bruises and how Shue had prevented thorough exam initially. Other witnesses spoke of Edward's prior bad reputation. Edward took the stand in his own defense, and he was indeed a smooth talker. Contemporary reports say that Edward spoke eloquently, denying harming Zona and suggesting that he had no reason to kill his beloved wife. He likely concocted a story that Zona had simply fallen or had a fit that led to her death, though such a claim was shredded by the autopsy. Edward's charm had fooled people before, but this time the jury wasn't buying it. After an 8-day trial filled with testimony, closing arguments were made. The jurors retired to deliberate on July 11th, 1897, and it only took them about an hour to reach a verdict. They found Edward guilty of first-degree murder.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, 10 out of 12 jurors were so convinced of his guilt and perhaps outraged by the crime that they voted to sentence him to death by hanging. However, 2 jurors opposed capital punishment, and in West Virginia, a death sentence had to be unanimous. Thus, the recommendation came back as life in prison rather than execution. The judge affirmed this. Edward would spend the rest of his natural life behind bars for the murder of Zona. As the Greenbrier Independent reported, though the evidence was entirely circumstantial, except for the autopsy,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
the verdict meets general approval. In other words, even without direct eyewitnesses, only a ghostly one, everyone was satisfied that justice had been served by convicting Edward based on this mostly circumstantial case. The community's reaction to the verdict was one of vindication and lingering anger. Many had truly come to believe Mary Jane's ghost story and thus viewed Edward as not just a murderer, but an almost diabolical figure, a man who thought he'd gotten away with murder until the supernatural intervened.
You know what I was thinking too with the 11-year-old that he sent to find her? I bet he was thinking if he sent an adult, they probably would have tried to help her or look at her more.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But with the kid, he freaked out and left. And then Edward had time to get back there before someone else did.
Yeah, more than
That's
an
a good
hour.
thought. Yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
Because an adult probably would have gone to check her pulses and would have seen the bruising and noticed her neck. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yep.
But a kid would report it and tell somebody,
And went
Catch.
right back to tell Edward.
tell him what had happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that is a really good point. I did not think of
He is very diabolical. That's what I was thinking.
Yes. Just days after the trial, still simmering with rage, a mob of local citizens actually formed with the intent to lynch Edward. Reports say between 15 and 30 men gathered on the night of July 11th, 1897, with a rope ready, planning to storm the jail and hang Edward from a tree. Fortunately, the sheriff got wind of this and took action. He had Edward transferred in secret to a safer location. Legend says the deputy hid Edward in the woods at one point to evade the mob. The lynch mob was dispersed before they could reach him. But the message from this was clear. A lot of folks in Greenbrier County would not have lost sleep if Edward had swung from a rope that night, but legal justice prevailed over vigilante justice in this case. Edward was moved to the West Virginia State Penitentiary in Moundsville to serve his life sentence. He arrived there in July 1897, likely already a figure of infamy among other prisoners given the publicity. In prison, he reportedly remained relatively quiet, his cockiness finally subdued. He never publicly confessed to Zona's murder, maintaining his innocence to the end. But karma or bad luck caught up with him not long after. In the spring of 1900, so he would have only been 39.
Yeah.
Edward died behind bars, succumbing to an epidemic, which they think was either typhoid fever or pneumonia that swept through the prison that year. His unclaimed body was buried in an unmarked grave on prison grounds, which was customary for prisoners whom no family would collect. Indeed, when word reached his relatives, not a single person came to retrieve him.
That's kind of sad.
It is kind of sad, but don't be a murderer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And plan to do this several more times.
Yeah.
They had 4 more planned.
Which is so horrible.
Mm-hmm.
As for Mary Jane, the mother who fought for justice with a little help, she lived a long life. Mary Jane was in her late 40s, early 50s when Zona died. After the trial, she was regarded with this kind of awe in the community. She never once recanted her story of Zona's ghostly visits. To her dying day, Mary Jane swore that everything she testified to was true, exactly as she experienced it. She passed away in September 1916, taking that conviction with her. And of Zona herself, the quote, Greenbrier Ghost, by all accounts, after the trial, she rested in peace. There were no further reports of Zona appearing to anyone. It's as if once her mother had secured justice, her spirit had no more need to wander. Zona was buried in the Little Soul Chapel Methodist Cemetery on a hill in Meadow Bluff, West Virginia, not far from her family's home. Her grave is modest, but over the years, it has drawn many curious visitors. They come because the story of the Greenbrier Ghost has become one of Appalachia's most famous legends, a true crime and ghost tale wrapped in one. In fact, the case's notoriety led West Virginia to install a state historical marker near Zona's burial site in 1991, which we will post a picture to, and I will show you ladies in a second. The black and white silver marker proudly proclaims the unique place this case holds in American legal history. It reads, quote, interred in nearby cemetery is Zona Heaster Shue, which, like, do we have to put Shue on her?
Yeah.
Her death in 1897 was presumed natural until her spirit appeared to her mother and described how she was killed by her husband, Edward. Autopsy on the exhumed body verified the operations account. Edward, found guilty of murder, was sentenced to the state prison. This is the only known case in which testimony from a ghost helped convict a murderer. It's not every day you see the word ghost on an official marker, but here it's part of the historical record. Tourists and ghost story lovers often stop to snap photos of this sign and pay respects to Zona's grave. The tale's been told and retold in books, stage plays, and even an opera titled The Greenbrier Ghost, and another one humorously named, quote, Everlasting Faint. It's worth pondering. Did a ghost truly solve a murder? What do you guys think?
I think so.
Sounds like it.
So too.
I don't think so.
Tell us what you think.
I don't know. I'm not a big believer in ghosts. I was kind of along the lines of the other person. Grief makes us feel things, but she did have details of how her daughter was murdered. I don't know. I'm just not a firm believer in ghosts. Maybe they just scare me too much and I don't want to think about them at 2 a.m. I don't know, but
yeah.
It's just to have some of those details.
Yeah.
That were very specific.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, that's a firsthand account right there.
Yeah. I mean, like, you could see her saying it was Edward, but the specific causes, it's that first vertebrae that gets me.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you would know that otherwise.
Krista's making faces.
I don't know. I never want to discount someone's story.
Yeah.
Because maybe it did happen. I don't know. I wasn't there. And just because I don't personally believe in ghosts doesn't mean that they aren't out there and things can't happen that we don't understand. But I don't know. We did see accounts of people who saw her head moving unnaturally. If you're going to choke someone, that's where it would be, is right at that first vertebrae. But
Fair.
Yeah,
it also could have been a ghost. And maybe she did appear and give her those details. So I don't know. We'll never know for sure. So, because no one else was there. It was just her. So
yeah, that's true.
I don't know. It is a cool story.
Yeah.
I'm glad she got justice.
Yes.
Me too.
Me too.
And the town too. And they were able to stop this from happening to anybody else.
Yeah,
So-
4 more times.
Yeah. I can't imagine.
I wish there was a way to have tried him for his second wife's murder.
Yeah.
That was the only thing I was thinking.
Did it say how she died?
It said that she fell and hit her head on a rock.
Oh, that's right.
It probably was too long later.
Well, and there's no way to
verify that.
Yeah, or even prove that it was something different if it was like a blunt force trauma. Yeah.
If he's already spending life in prison,
then
I heard one case today where there were like 80 examples, but they just charged him for one single one because it got him first-degree murder, life in prison without the possibility of parole, and they didn't even take the other things to court.
Yeah.
So you don't have to prove them all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, tell us what you think. Do you think the Greenbrier Ghost or Zona's spirit came and visited her mother? Or are you more of a skeptic and think there's another way she found that out? We respect both opinions. But we do like the spookier side of true crime sometimes. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Crime Clueless. We would love if you have a chance and you enjoyed this, if you would give us a rating and or a review on Apple. You can just scroll down to the bottom. There are stars. If you click them, that really helps us grow our listener base and be shown to a bigger audience, grow our community. Up at the top on Spotify, you can click the little 3 dots and leave us a quick rating. That would be fantastic. If you're looking for the resources that we used in this episode, you can see them on our blog, which we'll link in the show notes. You can find it on our website, crimeclueless.com, under blog. We would love to connect with you on social media and hear what you think about the Greenbrier Ghost. You can connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, etc. We're at Crime Clueless on all of those. And if you enjoyed this and want to share it with your true crime bestie,
please do.
Spooky story. Yep. You can find our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, iHeart, and all major streaming platforms. As always, remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murderers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.